Welcome to the Putback on SNY.TV. I'm Ian Begley here with Chris Williamson. Chris, what do we have for the baseline this week?
Tuesday in Texas, RJ Barrett put up his best offensive performance in over a month. 32 points with a career-high 7 3-pointers. This followed a stretch of illness and inconsistency for the third-year first-rounder. So what have both RJ and Coach Stibbs said about Barrett's performance thus far?
RJ is saying he remains confident because of the work that he puts in and day out. And it's interesting because Tom Thibodeau, he said on Saturday that he is also confident in RJ Barrett in the shot getting back, and it's based on, him getting back in the gym. And so he said, let's get back in the gym and get to it. And that was taken as maybe a shot at RJ Barrett's work ethic, or Thibodeau hinting that RJ was not in the gym as much as he had been in the past. But we followed up with Thibodeau on Monday, and he said, no, that's not what he meant at all. He said RJ was not in the gym just because he was sick. And so it seems to be full confidence behind RJ Barrett and getting the shot going, but they need to get it going because this team, as you said, Chris, has been struggling. And so RJ Barrett's shooting is a big part of the Knicks' success.
How important do you believe this season is for RJ's future in New York City?
Well, I think that like a stretch of this season, I think is not going to outweigh the way the Knicks fully feel about him in a big picture sense, but everything matters. And in this off season, the Knicks are going to have the opportunity to negotiate an extension with RJ Barrett. And it'll be interesting to see what the market is there, how active the conversations are there. So everything matters, including what's happening today. But I don't think a cold, month-long stretch is going to change the way globally that the organization feels about RJ Barrett.
This week's guest is Brian Windhorst, a senior NBA writer for ESPN and the host of the Brian Windhorst and Hoop Collective podcast.
When you look at him last year, he had a terrific sophomore season. Over NBA history, we often see players have really big steps in their third season. The third year is a very important year. Go back and look at Damian Lillard's third year. Big leap. I mean, I could go down the line historically. When you saw the way RJ played last year, particularly how he improved his shot, which is so important in today's NBA, and it just hasn't happened. His shooting has dramatically receded. I know that he has had some challenges this year. I know he was ill at one point. So the year is not over. Obviously, we're only about a quarter of the way through, but it has not been the leap forward third year that so many people were hoping to see from him.
With last season, everything was going through Julius Randle, and RJ Barrett was getting good looks off of Julius Randle, and he was also, the clear number 2 option on offense, and he was, aggressive off the dribble. And this year's team, it's a different roster, different team complexion, different hierarchy. But I think with the move that was recently made, Kemba Walker out of the rotation, Alec Burks starting point guard, maybe that lends itself more so to what we saw last year, things going through Julius Randle, and then maybe there's a clearer pecking order for RJ Barrett. But so far this season, I think it's been that pecking order that's not there, that clear hierarchy that's not there, and that's impacted RJ Barrett.
And you obviously, wrote about the Knicks needing to extend Julius Randle this spring. What do you make of his performance this season after such a great season last year?
Yeah, well, I think even internally, the Knicks would say that when they signed him to that contract, they didn't necessarily know that if last year was going to be the new standard going forward. The challenge is that there's such a demand put on him. The Knicks have played a lot of close games this year, so they have a lot of situations where they need a playmaker down the stretch of a game, and he's not a superstar. He's not going to be able to deliver like Kevin Durant can, like LeBron James can, like Kawhi Leonard can. He is several cuts below those guys. So if you are expecting him to carry you to victory over and over and over, I think you're going to get disappointed.
Knicks fans, are you still screaming bing bong when the Knicks do something good? Stop! Ian Begley says the Knicks are 3-7 when bing bong is played at the Garden. Teams are using bing bong to mock us on social media. Bing bong doesn't work. Bing bong doesn't even guarantee that the subway doors close. Try some other phrases. What about knick knock, top drop? These are just off the top of my head. Do the right thing. Bang the bing bong.
And look,
And Ian, Kemba Walker spoke on Monday, the first time since he was removed from the Knicks rotation last week. What did Kemba have to say about his removal and his future in New York?
Well, he said kind of what you'd expect about the removal, that it was tough, that he wants to be out there, but he's a professional. So you're not going to see him loafing on the bench. In fact, just the opposite. He's up, he's cheering for his teammates. He's one of the first Knicks at every timeout, going and greeting guys. So that's just kind of pro he is. But the interesting thing about his future, it seems like that if Kemba decides he's not comfortable with his role and he wants to go elsewhere, the Knicks, I think, would work with Kemba Walker, trying to get him somewhere that he wants to be. If this is not the situation for him, I think that, that's a fluid situation. I don't think Kemba's made any decisions on that just yet, but, he will have a voice in any kind of transaction that were to take place moving forward. So it wouldn't be the Knicks just dumping Kemba Walker. I think there's too much respect on both sides of this relationship for that to happen. But I think it would be more of a meeting of the minds if the Knicks were to trade Kemba Walker ahead of the trade deadline.
I know that I've started following Formula One a lot more because I watched that Netflix show, Drive to Survive. This is a race car that is maybe meant to run fifth or sixth. This is where the Knicks are. The Knicks don't have the Mercedes right now. They don't have the Ferrari. And, Leon is not replacing the driver, if you want me to extend this metaphor, because last year that driver got him into fourth. And maybe this year they can still do that. But they don't have the Mercedes. It's Leon's job at some point to get them the Mercedes. I think Tibbs is capable of driving the Mercedes just as well as he's capable of driving the Ford Bronco or whatever we're going to call it.
Brian, you got everyone excited here in New York on one of the Hoop Collective podcast shows. It was several months ago now, but you said that you thought that there was a player who was going to want to come to New York via trade.
I still believe that when a star player wants to get out of his situation and would demand a trade, I think the Knicks would be at or near the top of the list. We have not seen star players really be able to dictate their terms in trade. So you have Ben Simmons, who's asking for a trade. I think he would love to be a Knick. He doesn't have the ability to guide himself because of his contract status. But if Ben Simmons was traded to the Knicks today, my belief is he would be thrilled. But I think he'd be thrilled to be traded anywhere, just to clarify that.
Damian Lillard's name has been one that's been bandied about a lot ever since the summer. I think even though he's saying that he's fully loyal to Portland, there are teams that are still keeping an eye on that situation because of the volatility and what's been said in the past. What's your read there? I mean, he's another player that can't really dictate where he wants to go, correct?
Yeah, Damian Lillard is a really tough case at the exact moment because not only does he have a bunch of time left on his contract, I think it's 3 years. If you were to trade for Dame Lillard, to be trading for a player who's 31 years old, who has an injury right now, and frankly has been dealing with this abdominal injury for 2+ even 3 years, and next summer is in position to ask for a contract extension of over $50 million to put up to 5 years on his contract, it's a little bit more complex. But of course, if you don't have a star player, the desire to get a star player is immense. And so anytime one might even think about becoming available, you are, of course, seriously looking at it. And I'm sure the Knicks have a bunch of names on their board where they would have evolving thought processes and valuations depending on what happened. And they wouldn't be unique if that was the case.
That'll do it for us. Our thanks to Brian Windhorst of ESPN for joining us on the Putback. We'll be back next Wednesday live, coming off of Knicks Warriors with another edition of the show. So we will see you then.